Hi everyone, I'm Doug Black at Inside HPC, and today, in advance of next week's big supercomputing show, SC22, I'm very happy to be with Earl Joseph. He is CEO of Hyperion Research. We have Katie Antypas. She is Division Deputy at NERSC. And to make sure I get NERSC acronym correct, Katie, what is the National
National
Energy?
Energy Research Scientific Computing Center.
Exactly. Thank you. And Addison Snell, CEO of Intersect 360 Research. So we're talking about next week's show and some of the events, the sessions, the keynotes, maybe some news and other developments that attendees might look for as they get ready and fill out their schedules for next week. So, Addison, why don't we start with you? Is there anything in particular you're going to be interested in, as the conference unfolds?
Well, there's always a lot that goes on at supercomputing, and it's hard to narrow it down to just a couple of things, but I'll be slightly self-serving and say I'm very interested in the opening plenary panel session this year on the theme of HPC accelerates, looking at the many dimensions of HPC acceleration. I'm honored to moderate that opening plenary session on Monday this year, and in looking at the many dimensions of HPC acceleration, have a really diverse panel in terms of the experience that they and perspective that they'll bring to that question, looking at multiple different types of HPC, from traditional supercomputing to data science to artificial intelligence, and the many different levels of what do we mean by acceleration and what gets accelerated from the very literal notion of the application goes faster through accelerating scientific discovery and out to broader human initiatives and how we accelerate, multiple levels of advancement. So I'll be joined by Gina Taurasi from Oak Ridge National Labs, where we have the Frontier Supercomputer, Jim Carey, Cherry, representing NIH and NIAID and NIAD with a really a data science viewpoint. Shubham Gupta, who's from Meta and the Fundamental AI Research Lab, Facebook AI Research, with a hyperscale and AI perspective, and Hemant Tabari, who's the chair of the National Supercomputing Mission at CDAC in India, where they're now building out all of these areas, but from a domestic technologies capability. So those four different perspectives, I think we're going to have a really fun conversation. There's a lot more, but I'll lead with that one.
Okay. Do you want to add any comment on? I think it's very interesting to look at, with this plethora of architectures and chips, how do organizations filter through those and figure out which one is the right one for them? It's got to be a monumental task, I would think.
Well, yeah, and the other two can comment on this exact question as well, but we've read it in our research as was one of the chief challenges facing end users for the past two generations of technology acquisition, and it's only getting more challenging as we look at multiple choices in CPU, multiple choices in accelerator, and what's the software ecosystem that goes behind all of those. We've got NVIDIA with a multi-generational first mover advantage on the accelerator side, Intel with a historical advantage on the CPU and x86, and AMD, who's the first to market with both in an integrated package, but trying to come from behind essentially in both races. So that plus everything else in the ecosystem around it is a tremendous challenge for the end user community.
Great. And Katie and Earl, do you want to jump in on that topic? It's such a key topic these days.
Sure, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to most of the show is to learn more about all the different processors, hardware, software, and all the new partnerships that are out there. Even on quantum computing, there's going to be a few interesting partnerships announced. But in the software realm too, moving the application software forward to all these new architectures, new hardware, I think is going to be fascinating. And then even at the system architecture level, the new interconnects and the recomposable architectures, new types of memory systems, just a host of new applications and new type of hardware and software out there, and also the incorporation of AI into traditional modeling and simulation. I think those are some fascinating areas that I hope to learn a lot more about.
Okay, now Katie, what are you looking for next week? What are you most intrigued by or most interested in?
Yeah, I think what really struck me when looking at the technical program was the really profound questions facing our community, the high performance computing community, are totally imprinted all over this program. And so we're looking at the rise of quantum computing and how to integrate that with classical computing. Questions about how the cloud and traditional on-prem systems can, users can surge from one to the other. I've seen many talks in that place. I'm really interested in, I think it's a Thursday afternoon panel on reinventing HPC, and that goes down to the fundamental partnerships that we have with our vendor community and how we design systems. So there's just big questions that are being asked and being addressed this next week at supercomputing. And, in a sense, I wonder if people really saved it up from the last couple of years of being in COVID, but this just looks like an absolutely fantastic program to me.
Yeah. Now, Earl, I know that earlier this week, Hyperion came out with its market update. Were there some major findings, surprising findings that you'll look to see reflected in discussions and maybe even hallway chat next week?
Very much so. So we're always interested in the top 500 list. Also, the Chinese users are not submitting these days. So tracking what's going on in China, is a lot more work, and we're doing, it takes a lot more effort. But in particular, we want to find out much more about what's going on with the supply chain in the short term. For this year, we had a healthy growth rate estimate. The first half of the year is coming in, like 1 or 2% growth. We expect the second half to do better, but want to learn a lot more from the vendors and the users if acceptances will happen in time, to make this a healthy year versus just a moderate growth year. Also, in the longer term one is when the different exascale systems will be accepted. We're kind of seeing around the world some delays on the acceptance on the exascale machines. A lot of it's due to supply chain, but also because a number of them are going to be built on domestic technology. Those technologies are taking longer than originally hoped for, to come on board. And I'm only talking here like 6 months to a year delay, but again, it crosses yearly border lines, and so that impacts our forecast quite heavily. The other part that we're looking for is we're trying to track all the new applications out there, whether it's on AI, traditional mod sim, the quantum computing one. So we want to find out what are the best practices, which applications are actually working versus being in an experimental stage. And so right now, we're expecting to see very strong growth over the next 5 years, within the traditional mod sim. But then in the AI space, about 2.5 times more growth. And then the adoption of cloud computing to run HPC workloads, we're seeing that growing at a very high rate too. So we always look for a lot of data and inputs on how we make our numbers better.
Addison, how about you? Your ongoing market research. Again, big trends that you're kind of perceiving that could be fodder for discussion next week.
Yeah, well, Earl really nailed a lot of the high-level trends that obviously we want to track as analysts. So I won't repeat all of what he went into there. What I will say is, with regard to two of the things that have been major topics over the last couple of years, cloud and artificial intelligence, we are on the lookout for inflection points within the next generation. Do we start reaching a peak penetration of cloud computing versus on-prem for high performance computing? We have been in a high growth mode for cloud during the pandemic specifically. Now, the cloud does really well with uncertainty. As we start getting toward more normalized economic activity, to what extent is cloud going to start leveling off? And then with AI, we're already getting indications that the the configurations and technologies for HPC and AI might be, or what we think of as traditional HPC versus machine learning, might be starting to diverge a little bit. We've spent a couple of years talking about how they're coming together, and that's the easy thing. All right, now look at the forecast. Do they start to split apart again? And I'm going to be looking for some areas where I'm going to be looking for evidence of that one way or another in our conversations.
Great. And Katie, we were just chatting a little bit about Aurora at Argonne, at the Argonne Leadership Computing Facility, and the installation is beginning. As Earl said, it's taking time. And from your perspective, working within DOE and being very involved in that leadership class system area, what is your take on maybe some of the developments, discussions that'll be taking place next week in that area?
Well, I'm really excited to see some of the Gordon Bell submissions. I know there's a couple I think from Frontier, so they'll be very exciting to see. There may be one from a Pearl Letter, and so these systems are they're massive scales, and they are much more similar to, say, a light source that is deployed than the laptop computer on your desk right now. And these are just complex instruments with water cooling, networking cables that could stretch for miles and miles. And so it's not really a surprise that they take a long time to harden and deploy. Certainly some of the supply chain issues have made it just extremely challenging this year. I mean, I think everyone who's worked on deploying a supercomputer this generation through the COVID pandemic is going to have a lifetime story to tell. So hopefully we'll hear some good news soon on the acceptance of some of these systems as we go forward.
Yeah, the being at Argonne this week, the footprint of Aurora was truly impressive. And as we were saying earlier, they didn't add a computer room to the Argonne lab. They added a computer building, basically.
Right.
But here we are going to be at SC, and we finally have an exascale system in place and another one being installed. And it's a very, very exciting time. So
can I get in one other topic, Doug,
please,
as we head into
please.
supercomputing? I think the most important topic for the long term for our industry as we head into supercomputing is not anything that we already talked about, AI, quantum, cloud, or anything else. It's talent development. And we've got a real problem in our industry right now. And if we're going to keep chasing new horizons with HPC, we need new ideas. And that means targeting more youth in our industry, and it means a more diverse talent pool. We're very interested in the student cluster competitions. We're sponsoring one of our teams from our Winter Classic Invitational, which targets specifically historically Black colleges and universities and Hispanic serving institutions. We'll be running the Winter Classic again after supercomputing. But, please check out the student cluster competitions. Let's get more of these kids into HPC. And we're hosting a Birds of a Feather session on Thursday afternoon on racial inclusion in HPC. We need a broader, more diverse talent pool coming into this industry in the long term for the health of our industry, or it all dries up.
Yeah, a lot of violent agreement on that point. That's a great point, Addison.
Not even violent agreement. This is pleasant agreement, right? We're not fighting about this.
I agree 100%. That's the number one issue that's impacting the industry and could cause a slowdown and a host of issues if it's not addressed.
Yep, great issue. I think another big issue, SC, of course, is an international conference, but we have a ratcheting up trade war between the US and China. I wonder how Chinese and American HPC people interact at a conference like this, where again, the tensions are rising. We're increasing restrictions on technology that we're allowing China to have access to. NVIDIA just came out with a kind of scaled back A100 to get to work within the new restrictions. But is that going to be a major topic of discussion? Would you all say, please, anybody jump in on that one?
Earl, you want to go first or me?
Sure. So the issue with the U.S. and China is very strong. Also, Europe is trying to do its own domestic processors, domestic systems, in addition to that. But right now, the political tensions are so strong. A number of the Chinese vendors don't plan to be at the show, and most of the Chinese users will not be going to the show. Now, China has just delayed their supercomputing show that they have in China to, I believe, mid-December, last I heard. But again, the political ramifications are very severe right now. And we, for example, on the top 500 list, we believe there's somewhere between 4 to 6 Chinese systems that would make the top 10 of the list right now. And we don't expect any of those to be announced or even talked about. So there are definitely tensions. I think scientist to scientist, there's a willingness and interest, to work together. But because of the political situation, it's not really as possible as it used to be. And, we've heard expressions from many people that they hope things will change and can get better. But every 2 months, it's getting worse. And Doug, as you were saying, there's restrictions. Well, there were some restrictions 2 years ago. Then there were a whole bunch more a year ago. And then 2 months ago, a whole another set came in. So this is not a one-off or 1 or 2 thing. It's a kind of a rolling wave. And that creates tremendous tensions then.
Yeah, a growing wave. And sometimes I wish scientists ran the world and not politicians, but that's an idle wish, I guess. Okay, any other final points anyone would like to make about this?
I would like just to thank Candy Culhane, the whole SC team, for pulling all this off and everything together. I mean, the number of meetings, the number of presentations, the number of panels, poster sessions and everything else, and to be able to do it both live and virtual, and trying to have everything covered both ways. I think it's just phenomenal that they were able to do this. Just tremendous work on their part.
Okay.
And we're trying to get back together, and we can get back together. That's the great thing. But
Right.
we can also choose to do it more safely. We've had some HPC conferences in the past that have been COVID-19 super spreader events. We can do better than that as a community. NERSC 360 Research is one of the coordinators of an HPC community COVID safety pledge that has 3 main focuses. Be up to date on your vaccines, self-test, and wear a mask when you're in a public area. And those are things that are not required, but the more of us that choose to do them, the safer this can be, and the more often we can get together.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
and maybe
good.
I can just end by really encouraging people who it might be your first time going to SC. I think one of the best things you can do is try to go into those BOFs. Those are the birds of the feather sessions, and meet your colleagues from different institutions and organizations and really engage on a technical level. I mean, there's some just fascinating and up and coming areas. I mean, I'm looking at the program and seeing all the discussions about mixed precision, and with our CPUs and GPUs becoming so incredibly powerful, questions around the network are popping up again. And so seeing a lot of networking topics this year. So please go to those sessions. Don't be shy. Everyone has had a first year and a first time at SC. And although the conference can be huge and overwhelming, you are welcome here.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we've been with Addison Snell, Earl Joseph, Katie Antypas. Thanks so much. Great to be with you. Enjoy the conference next week.